Dr. Morrison had asked to talk on this topic. He had seen some material from a presentation that was actually presented, I think, at the BAMP conference in terms of what is some of the differences in species, in terms of feed conversion potential, maybe what the potential is for pigs, and we'll talk a little bit about genetics, although Jack will do a much more eloquent job on that, and then Steve will talk to us about feed efficiency. So we'll get started. That's kind of the background for what Dr. Morrison had asked to talk about. So when I was thinking about the presentation, he asked to benchmark against the species. So I thought, you know, what would be some interesting species comparisons to look at? And, you know, we're going to look at poultry in terms of both broilers as well as turkeys, but I thought I'd start out with beef. PIC is owned by a company, Genus, who also owns ABS. And so we're involved in the beef cattle genetics business. So I asked our beef guys, I said, I'm doing this presentation on whole herd feed conversion. What's the potential for beef? And so this is the answer that they gave me. You can go through the calculations. They looked at, I mean, they did some homework. They told me what the feed usage were for a bull and how many calves they had per year. A cow, feedlot steer, feed efficiency of 6.0 is what they said the average would be. So about almost 1,700 pounds to produce a calf with the bulls and the cows. Pounds produced, the cull bulls, the cull cows, so 100 pounds for the cull bulls, 100 pounds for the cull cows, a feedlot steer at 1250, so about 1525. So when you look at those numbers, just on a whole herd or a whole system feed efficiency to produce a 1,250 pound steer, it's about 11 pounds of feed per pound produced for a feed efficiency standpoint. So here's what I sent back to the guys. We better be lucky it tastes good to be able to pay so much for a product that requires so much feed. And you know, I was just kidding with them. And obviously some of that feed would be grass and pasture and some of those types of things, so it's hard to make that comparison. But there is definitely room from a genetic potential standpoint to improve feed efficiency in cattle. So main part of the presentation, and these are some data that were presented at our symposium this year at the PIC symposium. And I really thank Stacy and at AgriStats, and actually this was presented by one of their consultants, an individual named Mike Donahoe, who works a lot with the poultry side, and this was presented at our symposium. And he gave a summary on where the broiler industry was in terms of some key traits, some of the things that we're going to talk about. So this just shows the trend from 1992, looking at days to 5 pound. A 5 pound bird is one of the measures that they looked at, as well as what they've done for a caloric conversion or an adjusted calorie per pound of bird produced. And you can see very impressive trends, if we have a pointer, very impressive trends from 92 up through 2010 in terms, you know, you're taking about 10 days off the age to get to a 5 pound bird, introducing caloric conversion from about 30,000 down to about 2,550. So very impressive in terms of the things that they've been able to do from a genetic standpoint, a nutrition standpoint, and a production standpoint. So there's the potential for broilers in terms of a trend. Now at the same time, they've also been able to increase their live, hey, thanks, Steve. I should be a little more prepared as a speaker to have a...
Mark over there.
Thanks for the pointer. In terms of one of the parameters that they look at is obviously the highest cost, most profitable cut within the bird would be white meat. And at the same time that they made dramatic improvements in efficiency and growth rate, they've significantly improved yield of white meat from about 14.5% all the way up to 21%. I don't know if you guys get and see broilers, but the breast on a broiler is just, it's incredible. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's well, the old Arnold Schwarzenegger, not the the old man Arnold Schwarzenegger back in his day in terms of the size of the chest, but just a tremendous improvement that they've made in changing the composition of the gain as well as the efficiency of the gain. And the other thing that's maybe even more impressive is the things that they've done with live weights. Okay, this graph shows in 2000 the percentage of birds that were killed in the various weight categories that they classify. So 3.6 to 4.4 pounds, work our way around to 6-pound birds. Okay, in 2000, only 18% of their birds were in that heaviest category of 6 pounds, and today almost half their birds are over 6 pounds. That's a big chicken, and there's actually some segments of their industry that are growing 9 or 10-pound chickens, and actually some 12-pound chickens. So dramatic increase in efficiency, but at the same time dramatically increasing their weight as well. So just a dramatic shift within the industry. Another thing that we looked at for presentation, this was actually done in 2010, was to look at a species by species comparison. Okay, and this was actual feed conversion by species, looking at turkey in the blue, broiler in the red, and swine in the green. And again, this is for a 260-pound pig within the AgriStat study, showing the changes in conversion. Okay, and so for the broilers, right at 2, for the pigs, right at 2.6, and this is actually finishing, and then in the turkeys a little bit above that. So the turkeys and the swine would be very similar. A big gap between the turkey and the pigs and the broilers. Okay, and this was from January 7 through about the middle part of 2010, looking at a species comparison. Now, a couple of other metrics that we can look around that is this is actual caloric conversion. So this is adjusted for calories within the ingredient base that they utilize, a standardized ingredient base, looking at actual calorie of energy consumed to produce a pound of turkey, produce a pound of pig, or produce a pound of broiler within this set. And again, it's still a big gap, and right about 4,000 for turkeys, dip below that for pigs. And I'll show you some data in terms of potential. You know, there's some systems today achieving, somewhere in the 3,500 range. We'll call that top 10%. But just a benchmark reference about some of the differences there that exist today. To further break it down, and really in terms of what's important, is to look at what is the yield or the feed conversion per unit of carcass. Okay? And the first thing we'll take a look at is what is the eviscerated yield or carcass yield by the species. So you can see the broilers, and they've made some improvements in terms of yield. Pigs right at 76%, turkeys a tick above that, 77.5%. So there's some baseline differences between the species in terms of their carcass yield. Chickens making a nice improvement there. Another metric to look at is what is the cost per ton. So ultimately what we're going to get to is what is the cost of feed per pound of carcass produced. Okay, so we've worked our way through live conversion. We've talked about some of the yield differences, but what does it take to produce a pound of each of these species? And there are some significant differences in feed costs because of some of the biologic differences between the species. Obviously, and we wish we had feed prices like that in 2005, and this is through 2010, costs would be even higher. You can see some of the changes, but the relative differences remain the same. Because of the differences in the amino acid requirements primarily between broilers and turkeys versus pigs, they're going to be anywhere between $50, $60 per ton greater in cost to finish a pig or a broiler or a turkey versus what we are for pigs. And that difference stays relatively constant regardless of feed price. And that's just some differences in terms of the nutritional program required to get maximum lean growth or protein synthesis. Now, if we break it all down and put what is the actual feed cost per yielded pound of carcass by species. Then again, so this would take into account the baseline live weight feed conversion, broken down to carcass feed conversion, and then put it on a cost per pound of carcass conversion. You could see that pigs compare very favorably to broilers and an advantage over the turkeys based upon the data provided with AgriStat. And I'll show some other examples of that. I think is fairly consistent, okay? And so, very, very close with the broilers and the pigs. And we're, I think, all pig people in here, so we should be encouraged by that from a cost competitiveness standpoint, okay? And because we are competitive, I wanted to take a look at it. And, one of the things that the broiler industry has done is had a dramatic increase in live weight and carcass weights over the last 10 years as we looked at, basically doubled their carcass weight, okay? And, one of the things that we've been looking at and through our evaluations and from a genetic selection standpoint is really trying to push carcass weight within our pigs because we believe there's potential there from a cost standpoint as well as if you're able to maintain feed efficiency, what we can do going out to heavier weights. So this is some data from a trial that we recently completed where we took our pigs up to about 340, 360 pounds and looking at feed conversion from cumulative on test. And I think the point is that, even over a pretty good range up to these heavy weights, cumulative feed conversion does not change. The feed conversion is very good even out here to these heavier weights. If we would have looked at genetics 10 or 15 years ago, this inflection point would have been up here, a dramatic increase in feed conversion. But we're able to take pigs to much heavier weights and be able to maintain that feed conversion. In this trial, these trials are done without Paline or any other growth promotion. So, you could make a case that curve should be even a little bit flatter yet with some of the technologies that's out there. So, the pig can go to heavy weights. And in this trial, 350 pounds, relatively high energy diets, 1520, 1530 metabolizable energy. We were able to produce pigs up to 350 pounds at about 2.7 feed conversion, and that stays pretty efficient out there. So there's a potential to take pigs even heavier and maintain a good feed efficiency. Okay? Now, what I did then was if we took these to 290, these same graphs, so I extrapolated this data, and if we take that to 290, based upon the feed conversion that we would expect, this is the gold line here. This would be the cost per pound of carcass up to a 290-pound pig. So I took their data and extrapolated it based upon our feed efficiency curves that I just showed you, and you can see that there's an advantage there with the pigs based upon those assumptions. So, wanted to make the pigs look good and was able to do that. But I do think this is realistic based upon the data that they provided, the relative differences, and what we see taking the pigs to heavier weights. The more pounds you put on, if it's relatively efficient, you're going to lower that cost dramatically. Okay? So, now, other thing that Dr. Morrison had asked to talk about is, look at your data. What is the commercial potential today? And I think the title was a 2.0 feed conversion. I think maybe was the title. And, we have some boars in fire feeding stations that will do that. But I wanted to look at commercial potential. What is the potential out there today? And so I compiled some data from that as well as the broilers and the turkeys. Okay? Now, what I did, I guess I deviated from the program title, and I looked at it on a whole herd feed conversion basis, and that's got all the components with it. Okay, so looked at a system. It's located in Nebraska. Some of their sow productivity, it's about 12,000 sows in terms of their productivity. But what I really wanted to calculate was how many pounds of feed it took them to produce a weaned pig. So they're doing well from a reproductive standpoint. Pigs wean doing well, a good weaning weight. And at the end of the day, it takes them about 71.5 pounds of feed per weaned pig, and I've got the energy specifications on the diets in here, and then the pounds of feed per pound of weaned pig right at 5. And so, this is a metric that we look at. We measure a lot within our herds, and we'll see ranges anywhere from 70 to 100, 110, depending upon energy values and some of the things that they look at, levels of productivity. But, in terms of potential, this is a farm that's achieved this on about a year basis. Well, it actually is a year basis through May 2011. Very good reproduction, very good feed management, and as a result, a very excellent level of pounds per weaned pig. Now, when we look at the wean to finish side, another system that we work with in terms of, from the wean to finish side, in terms of what they're doing from a mortality standpoint, feed intake standpoint, feed conversion, and this is wean to finish from about 15 pounds to 280, and they're looking at a 2.29 feed conversion. And again, this was on a year basis within this system through May, same time period, the energy specifications that they had within their system. And so when you wrap it all up, you're looking at a whole herd feed conversion of about 2.43. And I know Steve's going to talk about, feed conversion could be a nebulous thing, and, he's, depending upon energy level, what your goals are. But, they had asked me to talk about what we believe the potential is, and in terms of potential, we would look at this for feed conversion, and then as well on the south side to look at a whole herd feed conversion of 2.4. So just some work that I put through based upon the challenge put forth, what is the potential. Excellent performance, what there is potential for pigs. Now, I tried to do the same thing for turkeys and broilers, and I see Kent Holden back there, and he probably would know a lot more about, I know he knows a lot more about turkeys than I do, because he would know a lot more, but I tried to do that for turkeys and broilers as well, and I tried to come up with whole herd feed conversion. Okay, so I had to come up with how much feed does it take to produce a chick. Okay, and so I look back, and again through some of the AgriStats data, we're looking at the pounds of feed that it takes to produce the metric that they use is feed per dozen eggs. Okay, is what they use to come up. And again, and Jack I know works with layer genetics and some of the things that he works with. They've made some pretty dramatic improvement from a genetic standpoint as well. I don't know, Jack, if you're going to talk about layers in it all, but you could pick his brain on that. They've made some very good genetic performance in some of the traits that they look at. And, of course, some of the changes that we would see similar in our numbers based upon energy level and some of those things. But, very good improvement. So trying to build a basis for, what are poultry and pigs, and in terms of looking at whole flock. And this is straight out of the Nicholas and the Cobb specifications for their growth curves within their technical material. Okay, so chose the performance that they would expect on their pigs and their pigs and their turkeys and their broilers from their main lines. And I guess this is the main line. This is what they say it is in their website. And then the Cobb 500 on the broiler side. But just to give you, an idea in terms of what they predict for average daily gain, what they do for feed conversion, and if you put it back to how much it takes to produce an egg and how much it takes hatchability and some of those types of things, you could come up with a whole herd feed or whole flock feed conversion. I don't even know if that's a term. I made that up. 2.61 for turkeys and 2.11 for broilers. So, it's like the guy was talking about making mistakes and admitting your mistakes. I did this on my own with my own research. It was an interesting exercise to go through because you're able to look at some of the species comparison, how they do things differently, and so it was very interesting. I think the growth rates and the feed efficiency, those are right out of their manuals. I tried to come up with what it was for a chick to try to come up with a species comparison. So, some examples, some things that I looked at for this talk based upon what Dr. Morrison had asked for. Again, an interesting exercise to go through as you look across the species. Now, I want to talk a little bit, what are some of the opportunities for feed conversion? I'm, of course, going to talk specifically about pigs. I want to talk a little bit about genetics, and I know Jack is going to do much more eloquent than I will in terms of talking about genetics. But a couple of things that I think will, move us forward. And I think one of the questions that people ask, and, obviously I work for PIC, so I'm going to talk about PIC, but all genetic companies get asked, is there room for genetic improvement? Can you continue to make? We've had a good, steady improvement in Born Alive, PSY, feed efficiency, average daily gain. Is there still room for improvement? What is the biologic potential? My answer to that is based upon what we look at and some of the new technology, and Jack and I were discussing this before the meeting here, there's still a lot of variation out there. And when there's variation, that you can go in and pick the individuals that allow you to make genetic improvement. So there is opportunity out there, and I think with some of the techniques that we have from a genetic standpoint, it'll allow us to move faster and improve some of those things even better. One of the things on the feed efficiency side, and I know Jack's going to talk about residual feed intake, one of the things that we do is measure individual feed intake on pigs, and we've historically done that at our nucleus level. One of the things that's changed within our program is that we're actually measuring it in crossbred or commercial situations. So it's not the pure line boars or the pure line gilts, it's our actual product cross. We're measuring that in a commercial farm, and that will allow us to make better and quicker genetic improvement in feed efficiency because we're measuring it in a commercial farm. So one of the technologies that's out there. I think I'm going to skip over the genomics because Jack will do much better at talking about that than I will. But one of the things that you've got to think about, and this goes back to your comment in terms of how inputs have changed, okay? When we look at that, it's $3.50 just based upon improvements of feed efficiency. Well, this curve looks at the improvement of our genetic trend for improvement in feed efficiency. And in the red line, that's feed efficiency by itself. Okay, so that's just reduction in back fat, reduction in growth rate, or an increase in growth rate, and potentially a reduction in feed intake. So that's the biologic change in feed efficiency. Now, one of the things that we do today is select for mortality. Okay, so as we improve mortality, not only are we increasing the number of pigs that are marketed and that live, but it also improves feed efficiency. And if you look at, we call just normal feed conversion, and then you add back the gain in mortality, we're gaining about 0.35 units per year in terms of improvements in feed efficiency because we're able to select for the normal trait of feed efficiency as well as mortality. And when you've got 100 and whatever bucks within a pig, every pig that you save, mortality is more and more important. So feed efficiency and selection for feed efficiency is vital, but improving livability, reducing mortality has even a bigger economic impact because of more pigs that you can sell, plus the feed savings within those pigs that are saved. Okay? And I want to talk, and this is some notes that shared with Dean Boyd, worked closely with him and looking at what are some of the opportunities from a production standpoint to influence feed efficiency. And we talked about mortality. A 1% change in mortality is about 0.05 units in feed conversion. And if you go through the economics, he talked about the impact there. Okay, then just overall disease. And he mentioned that I worked at Iowa State and I got my PhD. And Steve, getting old, I guess, 20 years ago, we did a lot of the same work looking at how immune system activation or how disease influences growth. And we're getting more detailed data and better estimates about how big this impact really is. And if you look at some of the diseases, HPS, flu, myco, you can get a bump in feed conversion 0.13, 0.26 for a 3 to 4 week window because of the changes that the pig undergoes to fight that disease. Reduction in feed intake, reduction in growth, which increases maintenance costs, the shift of nutrients away from lean tissue growth and toward the immune system. This is very harsh to the pig. It slows the pigs down and makes the pigs extremely inefficient. So technologies that we utilize, genetics, management, health, to minimize the effects of those diseases are going to have a bigger impact above mortality. And this 0.05 change, if we can minimize the effect of those diseases, reducing mortality 0.05, but I would argue that there's a 0.05 change if we can reduce the impact of these diseases during wean to finish. Okay? So they're harsh, they hurt the pig. The better that we can do to eliminate those, the more economic benefit that we're going to have. And I think, if you look at the variation in closeouts that you would see in a commercial situation, you see this type of variation. So I think it's pretty believable that can have an impact. Okay? Weaning stress, we're able to adapt those pigs and get them off to a good start, is going to improve livability, direct impact on average daily gain and feed conversion, and have a big impact as well. So, I think the case is that feed cost is going to be high, but not only do we have to improve feed efficiency through nutrition, feed manufacturing, and those types of things that we can do from the health side to reduce mortality, and things that we can do to eliminate the impact of this inflammatory response is going to help us with feed efficiency as well. So